Lina, welcome to the It's Not That Deep podcast.
Hey, Deepak.
Thanks for coming out to my beautiful studio.
Literally out.
Well, I'm really glad we could do this. We've been trying to set this up for, I think, over 6 months now. Been rescheduling, but we finally made it happen, even despite COVID. We're out here. You have a very interesting story. I'm very excited to get into it. Born in Ecuador, is
Yes.
that correct? You've bounced around from so many different kind of lanes, so many different career choices, and honestly, you're one of the people who make me feel like I'm lazy as hell.
Oh my gosh,
Because
no
you're
way.
always doing so many things. You have a career in international business and like development, that kind of space. You went to McGill.
Yes.
In Montreal. You founded Barre Jar, and we're gonna definitely get into Barre because to this day I still don't really understand it.
Oh, maybe we'll do a little demo. We'll make you try some exercises.
Oh my god, I don't think we're ready for all that out here. But all that to say, I could just sit here and list your accomplishments and like the amazing things that you do all day, but why don't we start from kind of like the beginning? Tell us your story a little bit from a high level.
All right. The very beginning. So like you mentioned, I was born in Ecuador, and I lived there in Quito, in the capital city, until I was 8. And then my dad actually got a scholarship to study a postgraduate degree in Vancouver. And we were only supposed to move for 2 years. That was the plan. My family has a business in Ecuador, so it was always, just have that experience and come back. And then when we moved, my parents kind of started getting jobs, and then things started changing for my family. And then my parents really realized that there were so many more opportunities for us in Canada. And then we ended up staying. We eventually became Canadian citizens. And then when I was looking at universities to go to, I was actually in French immersion.
Okay.
So I had this idea that I was like, I really want to go and practice French in Montreal.
Yeah.
So then that's why I applied to McGill.
Okay.
And it was actually kind of tough for my parents to accept me going because we only really had each other in Canada. We're not like some other families that, have a cousin in Toronto or
Yeah.
anything like that. So it's 5 hours away from Vancouver. Like you can get from one point of Ecuador to the other in like 15 hours driving.
Yeah.
So they're like, what? Like that's so far.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to make it to McGill, and then I moved here to Ottawa in 2016 on a 4-month contract. And I'm still here 4 years later.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I like that like kind of roundup way because so much has happened in between then and so many pivots and so many things that you've tasted and tried and I like this, I don't like this, but I like that you bring it back to your parents and having that experience with them coming over probably laid a lot of the foundation of who you are today.
100%.
Yeah, and so before we get into all of it, how many languages do you speak?
I speak 3.
Okay, that's
and then
awesome.
I tried to learn German for a second because I was working in the automotive industry for a little bit, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll work in the automotive industry in Germany. But then I discovered that was not for me, so then I haven't been practicing my German very much. But yeah, 3 languages fluently.
So what did you study at McGill?
I studied Latin American studies.
Okay.
So I went to French Canada to learn about Latin America.
Okay, I love it. That's hilarious. Yeah. You didn't want to go back. You didn't want to
It's actually really funny because when I was growing up in Vancouver, I always really wanted to fit in. And where I grew up, there was a lot of Iranian people actually. So people always would speak to me in Farsi. They would think that I was Iranian. But other than that, there wasn't really that much diversity. So I always tried to kind of just fit in, and I would always say like, no, I don't speak Spanish. And then people would say, but Lina Alvarez, like that's the Spanish last name. I'd be like, no, I really tried to hide it. And then when I went to McGill, I actually wanted to be a dentist.
Okay.
But I didn't finish one class. I needed to go into sciences. So when I showed up, I was like, okay, well, I'll just go into arts and then I'll transfer over. And again, it was kind of that discovery that I've always tried to do. I realized that the classes that I liked the most were about history in Latin America or anything to do with that and rediscovering my culture. So then I actually chose Latin American studies because it was the type of degree where I could choose a class from any single faculty. Like I did a linguistics class, I did a political science class, like environmental studies class, as long as it had to do with Latin America. So it was such a rediscovery of my culture for me, and then it led me to international business, but I never, ever imagined that that's where it would go.
So talk to me about that jump though, going from the linguistic side of things and learning the history and this and that, to then, you know what, I want to be in international business, I want to work in foreign affairs, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that shift.
So when I was in Vancouver, because I only went back my first summer after first year and the summer after second year, I actually met some people that were really entrepreneurial. So at that point we must have been like in our early 20s, like we're around the same age. But these were people that, you know, like they had companies that were like selling a ton of cars in China, like they were like millionaires already. And I was so inspired by like all the business things that they were doing. And then I got really interested in that. So I decided that I was going to pick up a business minor at McGill.
Okay.
Which wasn't really common for the people in my faculty either. And then by doing that, I actually once saw a posting for an intern position at the embassy in Argentina for the Trade Commissioner service.
Okay.
And when I applied for it, I definitely wasn't like, being a diplomat is my dream. I was just like, oh my gosh, I really want to get back to Latin America. I've always heard amazing things about Argentina. I guess I'll apply and see what happens. And then
this is my way to do that.
Yeah, that was the spot where like all the international business doors opened.
Oh, got it. Makes a lot of sense. And then talk to me about when that move after coming to Ottawa or wanting to actually work at Foreign Affairs, and then I'm pretty sure you did get a job at like working for, was it the consular or something like that?
Yeah, the consular team.
Yeah. Talk to me about that a little bit. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so it was interesting. After my internship, I actually spoke to one of my supervisors, and that was when I was like, I want to be a diplomat. Oh my gosh, this is my dream. I need to become an ambassador, especially because of my background in Latin America. And then she kind of gave me some advice, and she was like, you know, like you would be really great at it, but I suggest that like you try and explore as many other things before you really go into the ministry, because it can be kind of a very hierarchical process that takes a long time to move up.
Right.
So then I had heard about EDC, where I currently work, through a presentation. So I just like randomly applied to a job at EDC, being like, oh, I just want that preview of what working there would be like. And then that's when I got the position for 4 months.
Okay.
And when I moved to Ottawa, I rented an Airbnb a few blocks from here, because I was like, I'm going back to Montreal. I was still living there. I was working for a tech company, actually.
Okay.
And then opportunities just kept coming back. And then how I actually ended up going back to global affairs, somebody that I had worked with at the embassy actually was back here at headquarters after her posting. Mm-hmm. And she had mentioned that they were looking for people on her team. And honestly, I didn't really know what the job was. I hadn't worked in consular affairs, but then she was kind of saying like, we need someone that's really creative and innovative. Like, do you know of anyone? And I was like, yeah, me.
That's awesome.
So then that's how I ended up getting that opportunity. But honestly, I never really went looking for it. And when it did come up, I had to have conversations with like 10 friends being like, what do you think? This is so different than the path I've been on. Like, I don't even know what consular affairs is. Like, what if I hate it? Like, I don't know if I should do it. So it definitely wasn't like a plan at all whatsoever.
You just dove straight in.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about you. It's like, you know what? I don't know if I'll like this, but let me just dive in and try it anyway. So that's and I feel like that's also just the tip of the iceberg, because I was listening to another podcast that you're on, and I found out you're also a flight attendant.
Yes.
Yeah, you worked at a tech company, like in marketing or something. Like,
yeah,
what was
social media manager, customer support.
Like what? Like how many of these different things have you tasted and tried? But that's like that. You know, that speaks to your self-awareness, and that speaks to like, you know, what I genuinely do believe in is that we have to, like, especially at our age, just keep tasting things, just keep trying things, totally. Because you won't, like, I think it's almost more important learning what you don't like.
Oh, 100%.
Than learning like, oh my God, I love this is my passion, this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. Like, I think that's almost a flawed narrative that people have been sold, is that like just chase your passion. Like,
oh yeah,
I guess chase your passion if you're lucky enough to know what that is, but if not, you better try a bunch of things. Don't just sit there stagnant and like hope that things are gonna come to you. So kind of talk to me about like that, you know, while there's this whole like kind of rigid like diplomacy career that's like kind of waiting for you, you're also interested in entrepreneurship. How are you balancing the two?
Yeah, it was actually super unexpected. When I moved to Ottawa, I was thinking, I'm just coming here for the like diplomacy side of things. And then I actually discovered that there's a really awesome startup community. And it was, again, just by telling people that I was interested in that, they introduced me to like different people. And then they introduced me to different people. Like we met through our friend Alman, and
Right.
I met him through another friend, and everybody was just so welcoming and like, hey, we know that you're interested in that. Like, here's this free event.
Yep.
And I really loved it. I loved how small it was and how welcoming it was, and everyone always like wants to collaborate.
Yeah.
And, like, I love ideas. So anytime like a friend tells me about an idea, I'm like, that's amazing. You should do it. Like,
Yeah. 100%. This is like a big small town, and it gets a rap for being like a boring government town a lot of the time, but a lot of people are like actively trying to break free from that
Oh,
mold.
totally.
So we have like this community of like, I don't want to like just say young, but like people who are hungry to like do something a little bit different, living within that kind of like structure. So I find it very interesting because me personally, like I studied international management, and I thought that like, okay, if I take something like this that's going to be so open, like it's very general, like what does that even mean?
Mhm.
International like business or management, right? I'm like, I could do anything with this. But then with that, it was like, okay, just work for a company, start my own thing, work for like government and like foreign affairs, or do something like that. And like that was a realization that I came to like as well, in kind of a different way, that okay, yeah, it'd be cool, but I think the parts of working at global affairs or whatever would be very cool is just the travel. Like to me, that's
Yeah.
what kind of fires me up, not the actual job or the work. Like, because I didn't really know what
Totally.
was involved. I'm like, I guess you do like diplomat stuff, like cool, like you help people missions and things. I didn't know,
Yeah,
like I was just
exactly.
like, oh yeah, international business. That sounds
So
cool.
why were you interested in international business, like in grade 12? Like, what made you want to do that?
When I was younger, I thought that, like I always knew in my heart that like I love travel. Like I love, just not staying still. Like if it weren't for COVID, I probably would have went to 10 countries. Like I just love going places and experiencing their culture, their language, the people, everything. I love that, and that's kind of what I like to build my life around. But I was very much in a situation where it was like, I was good at science as well. I was good at those things, but I didn't enjoy, like I didn't just want to be a doctor for the sake of
Right.
making mom and dad happy, So, and I also didn't want to be an engineer or a lawyer. Like I found reasons for all the other ones that I didn't want to do, but I still had to go to uni. So I'm like, I guess I'll do business. Thinking of it now, like maybe not the smartest decision, but hindsight's
Yeah, it's
2020.
fair.
I made it out the other side okay. But to kind of answer your question, like international business to me, what that represented was I'd be able to conduct business internationally. That was it. That
Be a
was
jet
literally,
setter.
that was it. That was the line of thinking. I could, whatever it is, I could do it from not just one place. And I still very much hold that. Like I think it's still very much one of my ideals and one of the things that drive me even in like my own business endeavors, my own podcast. I'd love to be able to travel and do
Totally.
this, right? But I mean, you don't get the same kind of freedoms that for me even doing what I am right now, if I'm in this very stringent hierarchy like you talked about, where I
Can
have
be
to
tough.
exactly, you have to adhere to a certain like code, and like you can't say things out of line. Like I couldn't be swearing on here, like I couldn't be representing my country in a poor way. And all those kinds of things didn't sit right with me, and I was like, I don't want to censor myself. Like we're living in the best time to be alive where you can just have your voice. So like the
I love
pros
that.
and cons,
The best time to be alive, to have your voice.
yeah, everyone has one.
That's so true. I love that so much.
Everyone has been enabled to have a voice. Now, it gets complicated when those voices come together and create a movement, and then there's a counter movement, and then there's people. Now you have mob mentality. That all like that kind of stuff in history still applies. But now we all just have these supercomputers in our pocket.
It's so true.
That basically allow us to, like you were talking about it before. It's like you could start a podcast and put that out in less than 15 minutes and disseminate your voice to however many people around the world want to listen to that particular thing. And that is a privilege, but also a little bit of a responsibility.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
There's like some ideas out there that I'm like, this should not be gaining any traction, and somehow it does. But it's really funny what you mentioned, like the evolution of like technology too, because when we first moved to Canada, like we had dial-up, and some people started getting Wi-Fi, but my family was still kind of trying to save money, and my parents used to also use the dial-up as a way to check up on me and my brother. So they'd go to work, and I would always take care of my brother during the summers even, because, you know, we couldn't afford a babysitter. So my mom would call, and she'd be like, if the phone is busy and the dial-up is connected, you're not allowed to go on the computer when we're not home, and I'll know.
That's so funny. I remember the dial-up days.
Oh yeah, like the noise, like...
Oh, and whenever they'd pick up the phone, it would throw everything off. Like, Mom, get off the phone. Like, I'm trying to load this image. Like, that's what the internet was back then to me.
And LimeWire.
Yeah,
like
LimeWire.
MSN.
All that stuff. MSN days, coming home after school and just logging on to MSN and, like, appearing offline and online when your crush came on, and like just dumb things,
and like having an MSN boyfriend and like putting hearts or like girlfriend and putting like hearts of their name and your title,
making sure you're playing the right music, because it's linked to your like whatever, so they can see your status, like, oh, better play some hard 50 Cent or something, and like, yo, don't want them to think I'm soft, you know, like, it's like, what a dumb line of thinking.
Those were the days.
Yeah, MSN days. So we got a little sidetracked, but let's bring it back to kind of like, we were talking about entrepreneurship a little bit. Talk to me about how you transitioned into this area of fitness called Barre. What is Barre? Explain it for like dumb people like me who don't even know really what it is. I need to know, and people need to know what it's about, and then talk to us about how you started your own thing.
So I want to say that you're definitely not dumb, because it's a very difficult thing to understand, and it comes with a lot of like preconceived notions. So Barre originally started from a dancer who was injured, and then she needed to find a way to keep training, so she created this exercise that was kind of like physio and like a little bit of ballet, but just a way that was lower impact so that she could stay fit while she was recovering.
Right.
And then from that, it's kind of like, it just divides into completely different schools. So, you know, you have the Barre that's dance, like 100% dance, like choreography. Then you have the Barre that has gone more like towards yoga. Then you have the Barre that has gone like more towards Pilates.
Okay.
And the style of Barre that I teach is definitely more like a yoga Barre type mix.
Okay.
That really focuses on alignment, engaging your muscles, stability, breath, relaxation.
Now, when we talk alignment, are we talking like body alignment or body-mind alignment, like all that stuff?
I say both. I always like to say that my classes are kind of operated in a mindment philosophy.
Ooh.
So you're mixing mind and movement, and just making it inclusive. Like, I personally didn't even start working out at all until I discovered Barre in Ottawa in 2016. So before that, I really wasn't doing anything, you know, like I didn't notice that I wasn't fit because I was walking around campus everywhere in my undergrad. I didn't have a car, so it kind of flew under the radar. But then sitting for 8 hours a day in an office, I was like, oh no, like, something is going on with my body. And then my friends in Vancouver were doing Barre a lot. So then I discovered that there was a studio here in Ottawa, and I started going as a student. But I even remember like the first time I went, like I was terrified. Like, I'm not an athletic person, I'm not a coordinated person, I'm not a flexible person, like, I didn't know what to expect. And then I loved it so much, and at the time, actually, at my job, it was my first job out of undergrad, and I really didn't feel challenged. And I think a lot of new grads are going to feel this, where you spent like 23 years of your life, 21 years, wherever it is that you graduate, like being involved in clubs, building your skills up, you know, being president of clubs, like leading things, and then you step into an office environment and you're all of a sudden at the bottom of the totem pole, and you're being asked to like copy and paste information, and that's your job for 8 hours a day. And
Yeah, here's a spreadsheet.
yeah, and it was like soul crushing. Like that was probably the hardest year of my life. And then I was like, you know what? I need to do something. I need to take this into my own hands. And then that's when I started the Barre Jar on the side, because it was something that I had full control over. I could explore. Nobody was telling me, you're not qualified to do that. You're not ready to do that. And it was like that exploration piece and curiosity that I always try to lead with in my life.
I love that. The Barre Jar, first of all, so catchy. And you've grown like this really like big brand like already, and it's awesome. And I follow the page, and I find it really cool like how active you are with your community, and you're posting so many of these different things. Even though I still didn't fully understand what it was, I was like, they're doing something really cool over there in that corner. Probably not for me, but
totally it's for you.
I don't know if it's for me, but you know what, like just like you said before, I think it's very important to find something that is for you. And, I think a lot of people could get a lot out of that, because as you said, like you didn't really work out as much before, and like that wasn't really your priority. And I think like a lot of people are that way. It's just like shoved down people's throat to go to the gym, get buff, work out 4 or 5 times.
There's only one way to move.
Yeah, like, there's only like, you better go and like go for a 10K run or join a soccer league or like something, but it just doesn't fit for everybody. So I think that's really great that you found what worked for you, but not only that, you took it to the next level and you empower other people to do the same. So
because I had a pretty bad experience when I first wanted to try to start working out. I remember I went to a gym class, and I was again so terrified. Like I think I was wearing like a t-shirt from Frosh and like these jeans that I had in high school for my gym class. I'm not even kidding. And then I show up to the class, and it was some like body pump class or something, and halfway through the teacher says to me, "What are you doing? Those weights are too light. Go and pick up a heavier set of weights."
Oh, damn.
And this was in front of the entire class. I was mortified. I wanted to get out of there. And then I didn't go back to the gym for like 6 months, because I was like, clearly if I can't do it the way that she's telling me, fitness isn't for me. I'm not a fit person. I don't belong here. And that's exactly what I'm trying to like crush, because it's not right. Like different things work for different people, and that's what human-centered design is really about.
That's so important right there. And like it doesn't it doesn't just go for like people who think that like I've tried working out before and like blah blah blah. I think it also applies to people who have been working out their whole life, and like they think they built up this identity for themselves, and then an injury happens or something happens or like whatever, and then you can no longer do whatever that thing is, and now your identity's messed up. You can no longer like work out the same way or do the same thing, and it drives people to very bad places.
Definitely.
So that's awesome. Like I commend you for this. This is like amazing. Like seriously, it's not easy to, first of all, face that yourself and not just decide, you know what, screw it, not for me. I'm just gonna stick to my walks. That's good enough. Like you're like, no, like I should do something about this, and then I should help other people do it too. So again,
I didn't become a teacher until like a year and a half after I was like going a lot. And it was really scary for me, because I had never taught anything before in my life. And like to this day, I still say like, I'm not flexible and I'm not coordinated and I'm a teacher. But I think even like students have that perception of like, but the teacher must be so fit and flexible and like, all this kind of stuff. So it was kind of scary, but I was really driven by creating an impact for people. And I think that's what really drives me in my life.
Well, I think you definitely do. And another kind of thing that I wanted to kind of chat about before we wrap this up is what you're kind of, what you've moved towards a little bit now with strategic thinking. Like, what's it called exactly?
Strategic design.
Okay, strategic design. Let's talk about strategic design, because I was listening to a podcast that you were on, and you guys were going into it, and I felt like I related with everything that you guys were talking about. But I still don't completely get what strategic design is. Talk to me about it a little bit.
So you're not the only one. I'm actually going to start a master's in strategic design in September at the Parsons School of Design.
Congrats. That's
thank
awesome.
you. I'm really
Another
excited.
big step.
Yeah.
You just keep going. You can't like rest on your laurels. I love it. I love it.
I love exploring and doing new things. So I was like, okay, now that I'm super into this, like, how much deeper can I go, and like what roads can I explore, and where will they lead me? So that's why I decided to pursue the master's. But even in the information sessions, like, different professors kind of have different definitions of what it is, because it's a very like up and coming field and a new field. So my definition, the way that I see it, is kind of mixing the best of design, which is kind of, you know, creating something new, and then strategy, which is kind of like creating an impact and like having a goal and like going forward. So kind of what we had said earlier of like exploring and understanding what it is that you want to do. I forgot the 3 things.
No, I think it was understanding, right? You were talking about exploring
and then manifesting.
Manifesting.
Exactly.
There you go. I got you.
I had a brain fart right in the
It's
middle.
all good. We all do. Trust me. It's all good.
So exactly. It's around that understanding. So what is it about a problem that you're trying to solve?
Yep.
Kind of like pivoting, like testing things out, seeing, okay, does that work? Oh, it doesn't work. Let's change it. And then finally, like, materializing your solution or the impact that it is that you're trying to create.
Awesome. Give us an example.
Walk
us through
example.
it. Yeah. Of applying this process to something.
Okay, so the way that I applied this process to my master's degree.
Okay.
So I don't even remember when I first heard of, like, because strategic design is kind of like the big, like, umbrella term and the thought process. And then within it, you have kind of things like design thinking or like Scrum, Agile, like all these different techniques that you can use that lead to strategic design. So I don't really remember when it was that I first heard about design thinking, but I was super into it. I was like, oh, I love it so much. Like, I really want to try it out some more. And then because I was really involved in like the Ottawa startup community, I actually got to attend a lot of like startup weekends and hackathons.
Okay.
And if you've never attended one of those, it's kind of like you show up and you do exactly that. You work on a problem for the weekend, you try to prototype some solutions quickly, and then you present your solution at the end. So when I was involved in those events, I was like, I love this so much. Like, it caters to my curious nature. I am like the queen of analysis paralysis, believe it or not. So that's where like that strategic like thinking comes in.
It almost forces you to go.
Yeah,
You don't really have a choice because now there's a time.
Yeah, you have the constraints.
Yeah.
You need constraints to really come up with creative solutions. So then that was kind of my way of like testing, like, oh, do I actually like this design thinking strategy world? And I'm like, yeah, I love it so much. And then through that, then I was able to kind of find the proof and like the signs that, like, you know what, pursuing a master's in this is really something that I want to do, and like it would fulfill me at least until the next thing comes along, because I'm honestly so open to whatever doors open, but I know that for now, like, I want to dive deeper into that and explore it further.
Well, I could see you, and when we have our next podcast, being in a position where you're going to be teaching other people that. And this is just a bold, like, it's not that deep prediction, but like I could see you having your own course and like legitimately starting a brand where you're teaching people this, because it is so, I don't want to say cutting edge, but it's like taking a lot of different thoughts and ideas from different fields, and I feel like collecting it to help people think and make better decisions. And I think that right there, people are willing to pay a lot of money for any kind of edge on decision making. I think like it's just a no-brainer. Like a lot of the ways that we make decisions and the heuristics or whatever that we use to go about our days are outdated, and like we're like creatures of habits and momentum, and so many of the things that we do aren't like calculated and thought out in that way, because most people haven't been taught how to think or how to learn or how to execute.
And the whole process is all about creativity, critical thinking, communication. It also goes to like so many personal development topics. So for example, feedback is a huge thing. Like, so how do you communicate with someone and tell them, you know, that there's a better way to do stuff? And I find that even working in an office, like, it's really hard for people to be honest and give feedback sometimes, and it holds us back as humans from being able to have a great impact. So I love it so much, and I really hope that you're right. And now I'm like, that's gonna be my next action. One day I will definitely have some sort of course or offering.
Oh no, like I see it happening 100%. And like if you're still interested in it, who knows, like next thing you know,
Yeah,
you pivot and
definitely.
it's a whole nother thing. But I think that that's really interesting. Congratulations that you're doing that for your masters. I wanted to ask you kind of like it's just, because I just finished doing learning over Zoom for the first time, and I assume this class, like for the meantime, is going to be online. How do you feel about online learning?
So I was a person that at first would say I would never do a master's online. I would never ever do it. That makes no sense. You're not going to get any of the benefits out of it. No way. And then actually now with this situation, it's a pivot, you kind of have to change your way of thinking. And I've actually learned that you can connect with people so much online. Like I honestly don't feel like there's going to be a difference. Communities and getting to know people is really important to me. So as soon as I found out that I was accepted, I was already trying to join like the Facebook groups, the WhatsApp groups, all that kind of stuff. And then I actually took it upon myself to host a Zoom social last weekend.
Nice.
So I facilitated a little session where we had like kind of rotations of breakout rooms where people got to speak to each other, and then they would introduce their partner as opposed to introducing themselves. And the feedback was really great, and it helped us connect. And honestly, I feel like I'm becoming friends with some of these people.
That's great.
And somebody's in India, someone's in Switzerland, people are in New York, like DC, all over the world. And I love that so much because both of us have that passion for like international connection and cultures.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm really getting that with online. Like I'm really
That's
excited
awesome.
for it.
I do think that's where the future is moving. I still think it's clunky. I still think it's not where I'd like it to be. But those kinds of tools, right? The breakout rooms and like, it does require that extra mile effort, which clearly you're going to put in. So I'm not worried about you getting the most out of this. But I will say, overall, I still think there's something to in person, and that's why we're here today in person.
It's true.
And as opposed to over Zoom, because we probably could have had this a few weeks ago or even a month or 2 months ago, like the third last time we rescheduled over Zoom, right? But I've already found I'm having so much more fun here today because, and I'm going to be completely honest, I have this bad habit of like interrupting from time to time, but most people don't take it like offensive or like personally, because they know like when I'm in front of them that I don't mean any ill will or harm. It's just context. You get to see someone's face. On Zoom, I can't do any of that. I literally like, okay, are they done? They're done. Like, and that alone, that line of thinking screws up how I'm interacting with somebody, because now I just gotta like tone down me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because they do say that like most communication isn't verbal, right? So when you're speaking on a 2D dimension, you are losing a lot of that.
A lot.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
There's always a way to adjust to it.
Yes.
So for example, something that I think is important to do is, I have some colleagues that they never want to turn their camera on. They never actually want to participate. So, to really get the most out of the experience, I know it's different, but like you have to also show up.
Yes.
And show up fully and do the best that you can. And then something else is, for example, if you're sitting in a room in a group of people might start like nodding their head. You might start to feel like, okay, there's some consensus in the room, or this isn't going as well as I planned. But you can also do that visually through Zoom. So when I was at McGill, actually on student counselor, if you agreed with an idea, you would kind of just like shake your hand like that.
Okay.
So it's like you can just give different types of signals, or if someone says something, even just like thumbs up. Like you don't need to speak, but you can relay the message that you see what they're saying and like you agree with it.
That's powerful. I think we're in a big transitionary period right now where a lot of those things are still being established. I think those are all very valid. I like that a lot. But it does require buy-in from a lot of the group.
Definitely.
Because if you're the only one with your camera on, you're not going to be the only one with your camera on, right? So it's like, hey, everyone, let's put our cameras on for this like amount of time and then whatever. But I think it also has to do with our environment too. Like if you're sitting in your
100%.
in your home with
I
your
agree
kids
with that.
running around and this and that, I think there's a lot of studies out now showing like for a lot of people it's great. Like the benefits outweigh any of the negatives that come from that. But then on the flip side, it's like, okay, I'm not working, like my brain's not, I can't get into the flow that I need to get into to actually work and get things done. So I don't even know where this rant came from, but like I think the future of online learning is coming. Like, we're almost there.
Yeah.
But there are still some very frustrating things. Like, for example, like, I had to be on Zoom for 3 hours a day for this course, like every day almost. And that alone, like, I'm already on Zoom. I don't know about you, but I'm already on Zoom for like 4 or 5 hours in a day before that. And then on top of that, the course. It's not the same being on, and I'm not just speaking about Zoom, any video conferencing thing, right?
Yeah, it's definitely true.
Just sitting there and just being on. I'm someone with my my camera on the whole time. I don't really like mind, maybe not the whole time, but like most of the time. And it's just a lot. You actually get that Zoom fatigue, and it's like, if I was in a classroom, I'd still get fatigue, but just because I'm there, you know, it's different. And I'm not trying to like dissuade online learning. I think I love taking courses online, actually. I like taking the ones that I can kind of learn on my own time and be in like Facebook groups, like you said, and interact with people and this and that. But we just have a long way to go. And I don't think it's like Zoom calls and breakout rooms are the be all end all. I think we need more of this or whatever it was. And those kinds of different like hand motions and interaction.
Yeah, it's true. And I do also think that in a way it's made it more accessible, but in a way it's also made it less accessible. Like, for example, I'm really connected to my family in Ecuador still, and there are people who don't have access to internet at all, like whatsoever. So how can you say that a kid's going to do school online when they don't even have access to the internet? Like, they barely have access to electricity. And I know also in Paraguay they were having a lot of issues with that. So they started broadcasting classes over the TV because they're like, okay, people have a TV but not internet. So it's, you know, like, there's definitely, and that's where like the like iteration of design comes in. We can't just say the way that it is now is the way that it is, and like it's one and done and check. We got to keep changing and improving it and finding those things that do work.
I love that. That's absolutely it right there. And you know, you bring up a great point there that, you know, I'm complaining from a very privileged position. You know, like, I have an internet connection at almost all times, except that one time during COVID.
Oh yeah, when both of our internet, so we had the same internet supplier and it was down, and we're like, is it on yet? Is it on yet?
That was a day that actually I was like, man, I rely on this utility.
Yeah.
I need this way more than I thought. I thought I was oh yeah, I could go a day without my phone, or like, yeah, you know, it's no problem. I was legit just like bummed out because I kept going to do the things that I do, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess I can't use my Google Home. Like,
and that was like our way for social interaction, right? And I was also thinking too, like, I remember there was times in like high school when I didn't have any data on my phone, again, because I couldn't afford to pay for it. I just had the 500 text messages
I remember those days. Call me after 6.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, at least now I have data. I can like go on it a little bit. But yeah.
Awesome. I think we're gonna wrap this up soon.
Cool.
This has been incredible. You and me could sit and talk shit here for hours.
We should have our own sideshow.
We should.
Let's talk about any topic.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll pick random spots in Ottawa and set up this high quality production.
Okay, I love ideas. Anytime that like anyone talks to me about an idea, I'm like, oh, that's so cool, that's so cool, that's so cool.
Well, I think the world would really benefit, whether it's me or not, but from a podcast with you, because I do think that you have a lot of amazing ideas. You're up to a lot of like really cool things all the time. I can't keep up. Every time I go on your feed, there's something new, some new initiative, some new thing you're on, some new thing you're doing. I'm like, man, I'm so lazy. Like, I ain't doing shit. But to wrap this up, I usually do a lightning round, as you know. I'm just going to ask 3 questions, real short, but just remember it's not that deep.
All right.
If you were a superhero, what superhero would you be?
I like really don't like superhero movies.
Okay, let's switch it up. What's a type of movie that you do like?
Documentaries.
Okay, if you were a documentary, what's your favorite documentary of all time? You have to pick one.
Okay.
I don't love superhero things either, so I don't know why I asked that question. I think I heard someone ask it, and I'm like, people like that
Wait, now
one.
my brain is. I'm like, what documentaries have I watched lately? Too?
You did this one to yourself. You gotta.
Which documentaries do I like? I watched one once that was called Dear Zachary,
Okay.
and it's kind of like a murdery mystery type
Like true crime.
documentary. Yeah, and maybe that's like not really. Maybe I like true crime. Maybe that's what I mean to say, because I did used to watch a lot of like cold case files growing up.
Nice.
I don't know why, it's kind of weird. I was literally like a teenager really into these shows.
You know what? Like I think I was 12 when I binge watched Dexter. So
Yeah.
like I'm right there. Yeah. I don't know. I think true crime is one of those things that a lot of people enjoy, but they don't openly talk about it. I think one of the first, like, complete side note, I know this is supposed to be the lightning round, but one of the first podcasts I ever like listened to was this one called Serial. It's like one of the most popular ones out there, but I was hooked. I was like, this is the most captivating piece of audio that I've ever listened to. I was in my car, and you know how like you pull up to your house and you're home, but it was like 10 minutes left in the episode. I'm like,
You just sat in your car.
I was like, I sat in my car and I'm like, no, like I gotta go drive a bit more because this is just so good. Like, Serial was amazing. But anyways, moving on to the next question.
Lightning. All right.
Oh, it sucks when I get a phone call in the middle of my... Okay. Favorite restaurant in Ottawa?
Favorite restaurant in Ottawa? Like, I don't even remember the last restaurant I went to. I'd probably say, I know I'm being terrible at this, Metropolitan. There we go.
Okay, Metropolitan. Okay.
Oh, but I love the hot dogs from Tavern on the Hill. I love hot dogs. Okay.
Tavern on the Hill.
Yeah.
Boom, we'll take it. Slid right in. Okay, last and final question. How do you want to be remembered?
Wow. I want to be inspiring.
Inspiring. I love it. I think you're on track. You inspire me. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This is awesome. I really enjoyed this. And just remember, it's not that deep.